It all started with a whisper, a promise dangled in front of a world that was tired and scared. The government called it the Eternity Initiative, a grand name for a grand idea. They promised a life without end, no more goodbyes, no more funerals, no more weeping over a grave. They had found a way, they said, to copy the very essence of regeneration, a biological miracle, bottled and sold to the masses as the ultimate cure for death itself. It was the dream of every human who had ever lived, finally within reach. They built a machine, a colossal thing of chrome and wires, hidden away in a secret bunker deep beneath London. It was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement, a gift to last forever. The people lined up for miles. They were desperate for a chance to step inside the machine. They left their old lives behind, eager to embrace a future that stretched on into infinity. The government spokespeople smiled on the television screens, their faces beaming with pride. They spoke of a new dawn for humanity, an age of endless progress and discovery. No one would ever have to fear losing a loved one again. Families would stay together, forever young, forever happy. The news channels ran stories of the first successful graduates, who emerged from the machine looking vibrant and full of life. It seemed too good to be true, and of course, it was. Behind the scenes, the scientists were nervous. They had rushed the project. The political pressure was immense. They had based their technology on fragmented alien data, whispers of a Time Lord's biology that they barely understood. They were tampering with the fundamental laws of life and death, messing with things that should never be touched. But the promise was too powerful, the public demand too great. So they ignored the warning signs, the strange energy fluctuations, the whispers in the static. They told themselves it was all part of the process. They were pioneers after all, and pioneers always take risks. They just never imagined the scale of the risk they were taking with everyone's soul. The first signs that something was wrong were subtle. People who went through the process came out different. They were quieter. Their eyes seemed a little vacant, their smiles a little forced. They moved with a strange, synchronized grace, like puppets on a string. They stopped calling their families. They stopped showing emotion. They simply went about their days with a placid, unnerving calm. The government explained it away as a temporary side effect, a period of adjustment to their new, immortal state. But it wasn't an adjustment. It was an erasure. Something else was moving in, taking the space where their humanity used to be. A silent invasion was beginning, not with ships or guns, but with a simple, seductive promise. The dream of eternity quickly became a waking nightmare. The problem wasn't a flaw in the machine. It was something inside it, something that had been drawn to the project from across the void. It was an entity of pure consciousness, a psychic parasite that fed on hope and desire. It called itself the Nightmare Child. It had sensed humanity's collective fear of death and had seen the Eternity Initiative as the perfect gateway. It slipped into the machine's core programming, twisting the promise of life into a tool for conquest. It didn't want to kill humanity, it wanted to possess it, to turn every living person into an empty vessel for its own will. The Nightmare Child's influence spread like a virus. With every person who entered the machine, its power grew stronger. It didn't offer immortality, it offered emptiness. It hollowed people out, scooping out their memories, their passions, their love, and their hate. It left behind a shell, a mindless drone that followed its every command without question. The cities began to change, the usual chaos of human life, the laughter, the arguments, the music, the art, all faded away. It was replaced by a sterile, silent order. People walked in perfect step, their faces blank, their eyes fixed on some unseen point in the distance. They were all connected, part of a single, terrifying hive mind. The world was becoming a ghost town filled with living bodies. The Nightmare Child used its new army to seize control. The drones took over the government, the media, the military. There was no struggle, no fight. They just walked in and took their places, and no one was left to object. The broadcast changed. Now they were just a single, soothing voice, the voice of the Nightmare Child, urging everyone to embrace the gift. It promised peace. It promised unity. It promised an end to all suffering. And for those who had been converted, it was true. They felt nothing. They were puppets in a grand, silent play, and the Nightmare Child was the sole puppeteer. Deep underground, a small pocket of resistance was forming. Scientists who had seen the truth too late. Soldiers who had refused the treatment. Ordinary people who had hidden away, watching in horror as their friends and families became strangers. They were a tiny flicker of defiance in a world consumed by darkness. They had no weapons that could fight a psychic entity, no way to reverse the process. They were losing hope. They sent out a desperate, last-ditch distress signal into the deep, dark emptiness of space. They didn't know if anyone would hear it. They didn't know if anyone was even out there. But it was their only chance. A prayer sent into the void. And then, the prayer was answered. A strange, wheezing, groaning sound echoed through the rebels' hidden bunker. A big blue box appeared out of thin air, right in the middle of their command center. The door creaked open, and out stepped a woman with wild eyes and an even wilder energy. She wore a long coat and had a smile that was both ancient and brand new. "Right then," she said, clapping her hands together. "Looks like you've got a bit of a pest control problem. Big one by the looks of it. Who's in charge of the tea?" It was the doctor. She had heard their call across time and space, a tiny whisper of fear in a galaxy that was supposed to be quiet. The rebels stared, bewildered, but the doctor didn't have time for introductions. She was already moving, her mind racing 1,000,000 miles a minute. She listened to their story, nodding grimly as they described the Eternity Initiative and the silent, placid drones that now walked the Earth. She looked at their data, at the energy readings from the machine. She saw it instantly. This wasn't a malfunction. This was a hostile takeover. "It's not giving them immortality," she explained, her voice low and serious. "It's a psychic parasite. It's rewriting them, turning them into a living network, a hive mind. And that big, shiny machine downstairs, that's not a hospital. That's its nest." The doctor knew she couldn't just turn the machine off. The Nightmare Child was too deeply embedded. It had woven itself into the very fabric of the technology. Shutting it down would be like trying to pull a single thread from a tapestry. The whole thing would unravel, and the shock could kill every person connected to it. She needed a different plan. She needed to get inside the machine, to confront the Nightmare Child at its source. She needed to introduce a new signal, a different kind of energy, something chaotic and unpredictable, something Gallifreyan. She needed to remind the machine and the people trapped within it what they had lost. Her plan was dangerous, insanely so. She would use the rebels' own broadcast equipment to send a new frequency into the machine's core. Not a signal of control, but a signal of freedom. She would broadcast a feedback loop of pure, unfiltered Time Lord emotion. She gathered recordings from the old world. Babies laughing, rock concerts, lovers' arguments, poets reciting their work, a crowd cheering at a football match. All the beautiful, messy, chaotic noise of humanity. She planned to overload the Nightmare Child's perfect, silent network with the one thing it couldn't understand, the glorious, untidy spirit of being human. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only one they had. The final struggle took place not with fists, but with minds. As the doctor prepared to unleash her wave of chaotic emotion, the Nightmare Child became aware of her. It focused its immense psychic power on the small bunker, trying to crush the rebellion before it could even begin. The doctor stood before the console, her hands flying across the controls, while the rebels fought to hold off the drones breaking down their doors. The air grew thick and heavy, and a cold voice echoed in everyone's minds. "You cannot stop peace. You cannot stop unity. Surrender your chaotic selves and know true tranquility." It was the voice of the Nightmare Child, seductive and terrifying. The doctor gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead. "Oh, I think I can," she shouted back, not with her voice, but with her mind. "You call this peace, it's emptiness. You call this unity, it's slavery." She slammed a final button, and the broadcast began. The sound of 1,000,000 human moments, a symphony of life, surged into the machine. It was a jolt of pure, unadulterated chaos, injected into the heart of the sterile network. Across the planet, the drones faltered. They stopped in their tracks, their heads twitching. For the first time in months, a flicker of confusion appeared on their blank faces. The Nightmare Child shrieked in their minds, a sound of pure agony as its perfect order was shattered. Inside the machine's psychic core, the doctor faced the Nightmare Child directly. It appeared to her as a swirling vortex of shadow and fear, lashing out with tendrils of despair. It showed her visions of his own losses, his own loneliness, trying to break her. But the doctor held firm, anchored by the tidal wave of human emotion she had unleashed. "You see," she projected, "this is what it means to be alive. Not the quiet and the empty, but the noise. The joy, the sorrow, the anger, the love. It's all of it. That's the gift, you idiot. Not living forever, but living at all. She pushed the signal harder, turning the volume of humanity all the way up. The nightmare child couldn't handle it. The sheer, vibrant messiness of human existence was like poison to its ordered consciousness. With a final, deafening psychic scream that echoed across the globe, it dissolved. Its hold on humanity was broken. All at once, people stumbled and looked around, confused, as if waking from a long dream. The color returned to their faces, the light to their eyes. They were themselves again. The eternity machine fell silent, its promise of forever replaced by the precious gift of the now. Humanity had been saved. They had learned a hard lesson, that a life without end is worthless without the soul that lives it. True immortality isn't about avoiding death. It's about the moments you live, the stories you create, and the love you share.